Solitude is the great teacher, and to learn its lessons, you must pay attention to it. And maybe it's the first time you've heard someone say solitude is a teacher, because most of your life, you've heard something else. Why are you so quiet? Don't you want to come out with us? You should really try to make more friends. It's always sounded like a problem, hasn't it? Like you're missing out on some secret party everyone else got invited to. But let's be honest, you've never felt lonely in your own company. In fact, sometimes people make you feel lonelier. It's not that you don't like people. You just see through things. You notice the small lies in conversations, the way people laugh at things that aren't funny, the way they talk just to fill the silence. You've always wondered, why fill the silence? Isn't silence where the truth lives? When you were a kid, you saw things other people missed. You'd watch the way your teacher's smile faded when she turned away. You'd notice the way your parents' voices changed when they were tired. You could read a room before you even entered it. Maybe you thought everyone could. But you learned quickly, not everyone wants to see what's real. Some people are afraid of what's real, so they fill their lives with noise. Parties, small talk, endless scrolling. But you crave something deeper. You want to know why people do what they do. You want to understand. And sometimes that means stepping back, watching instead of joining in, listening instead of talking. People called you shy, or awkward, or antisocial. But none of those words fit. You're not afraid of people. You're just not afraid of yourself. You're comfortable in your own mind. You like your own thoughts. You don't need a crowd to feel alive. You don't need validation to feel worthy. Maybe you read books when others played games. Maybe you wrote stories while others chased trends. Maybe you spent hours just thinking. And people said, you think too much. But is there such a thing? Isn't thinking how we figure out who we are? Isn't reflection how we grow? You saw things differently. You always have. And sometimes that made you feel alone, like you were on the outside looking in. But what if being on the outside is exactly where you're meant to be? What if the view is clearer from here? You see patterns others miss. You notice connections. You understand motives. You sense when something's off. You ask questions others avoid. You want to know why. Why do people pretend? Why do they follow the crowd? Why do they fear silence? And maybe deep down, you know the answer. Most people are afraid to be alone with their thoughts. They're afraid of what they might find. But you're not afraid to look inside. You're not afraid to sit with your own mind. That's not antisocial. That's self-awareness. That's intelligence. That's courage. You've always been curious. You've always wanted to understand the world. And sometimes that means stepping back, observing, thinking, processing. Not everyone gets it. Some people think you're distant, or cold, or uninterested. But you feel everything deeply. You just don't show it the same way. You don't need to be the loudest in the room. You don't need to be the center of attention. You're content to watch, to listen, to learn. That's not a flaw. That's a gift. You see the world in layers. You notice what's hidden. You understand what's unsaid. You pick up on the energy in a room. You sense when someone's hurting. You know when someone's pretending. You can tell when something's real. That's not antisocial. That's insight. That's empathy. That's wisdom. You've always been a little different. And maybe you tried to hide it, tried to fit in, tried to be normal. But normal felt wrong. It felt fake. It felt like wearing someone else's skin. So you stopped trying. You started accepting yourself. You started trusting your instincts. You started honoring your truth. And that's where your real journey began. Let's talk about what it's really like to be a smart introvert in a noisy world. You walk into a room and you don't rush to speak. You scan, you sense, you read the energy before you even say hello. It's not nerves, it's strategy. You're gathering data, not just making an entrance. While others are quick to fill the air, you're watching for what's underneath. You notice the way someone's eyes dart when they're uncomfortable. You hear the hesitation in a voice before a big announcement. These details matter to you. They tell you more than words ever could. You're not antisocial. You're just tuned in to the subtleties most people miss. Sometimes you catch a sigh that signals someone's had enough, or a glance that says, I wish I could leave. You know when to step in and when to hold back. This is your quiet superpower. You don't need to dominate the conversation. You'd rather listen, absorb, and then offer something meaningful. Because when you speak, you want it to count. You've learned that words are currency. Spend them wisely and people listen. Waste them, and your voice blends into the background noise. That's why you pause before you answer. You weigh your words. You want to add value, not just volume. Some people mistake your silence for disinterest, but you're deeply engaged, just on a different frequency. You're not bored. You're processing. You're connecting dots no one else sees. You're analyzing, reflecting, understanding. This is how you make sense of the world. You crave depth, not just connection. You'd rather have one real conversation than 10 shallow ones. Small talk feels like static to you. It drains you. But a conversation about dreams, fears, or the meaning of life, that's where you come alive. You don't need a crowd. You need a spark. You need someone who gets it, someone who can go deep with you. That's why you keep your circle small. Not because you're unfriendly, but because you value quality over quantity. You'd rather invest in a few real bonds than spread yourself thin. Your friendships are built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. You don't do fake. You don't do surface. You want to know what makes people tick. You want to know what keeps them up at night. And you're willing to share your own truths too. When you find someone who understands, you open up. You share your thoughts, your hopes, your wildest ideas. You go all in. But until then, you're content with your own company. Solitude isn't loneliness for you. It's fuel. It's where your best ideas are born. You think, you create, you solve. You dive deep into hobbies, projects, and passions. You lose track of time when you're in the zone. That focus is your edge. You can sit with a problem for hours, turning it over in your mind. You don't rush for quick answers. You let solutions emerge. You trust your process. You know that breakthroughs come in the quiet moments. You're not afraid to be alone with your thoughts. In fact, you need it. The world can be overwhelming, noisy, demanding. You step back to recharge, to reset, to remember who you are. You protect your peace. You choose calm over chaos. You'd rather be alone than in the wrong company. That's not arrogance. It's self-respect. You know your worth. You don't chase approval. You don't bend to fit in. You follow your own path, even if it's not the popular one. You're not here to impress. You're here to express, to live honestly, to think deeply, to connect meaningfully. You're not antisocial. You're just smarter than most. You see the world through a different lens. You notice what others ignore. You value what others overlook. You bring insight, empathy, and integrity to everything you do. You're the one people turn to when they need real advice, when they need someone who will listen, not just talk, when they need a friend who understands, not just hears. You're the calm in the storm, the steady hand when things get rough. You don't need to shout to be heard. Your presence speaks for itself. You lead by example, not by demand. You inspire others to slow down, to think, to feel. You remind them that it's okay to be different, that it's okay to need space, that it's okay to want more from life than just fitting in. You show them the power of reflection, the beauty of solitude, the strength of quiet confidence. You're not antisocial. You're just wise. You're just awake. You're just you. And that's more than enough. So stop apologizing for who you are. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Stop pretending you're less just to fit in. Start owning your gifts. Start trusting your instincts. Start celebrating your difference. The world needs your insight. The world needs your depth. The world needs your truth. You are not a problem to be fixed. You are a gift to be cherished.
Let's dig into something most people miss about you. You're not just smart, you're socially intelligent too. Maybe you don't love crowds, but you read people better than most. You sense moods, motives, and hidden stories in a single glance. It's not magic. It's your mind at work. You notice things others overlook, a sigh, a pause, a flicker of doubt. You pick up on tension before anyone else feels it. You know when someone's pretending to be okay. You spot the friend who needs support, even when they say, "I'm fine." That's social intelligence in action. It's not about being the life of the party. It's about understanding what's really happening beneath the surface. You don't just hear words, you hear what's left unsaid. You see the stories behind the smiles. You're not antisocial, you're just tuned into a different frequency. You value honesty over hype, depth over drama. You know the rules of social life, but you don't play games. You'd rather be real than popular. You'd rather have one honest friend than 100 fake ones. That's emotional intelligence, too. You know your feelings, and you respect them. You don't force yourself to fit in where you don't belong. You honor your energy. You know when you need to step back and recharge. Solitude isn't a punishment for you. It's your recharge station, your creative lab. You come back from alone time with new ideas and fresh clarity. That's not avoidance. It's wisdom. You're not running from people. You're running toward your own peace. You've learned to manage your emotions, not just react to them. You pause before you speak. You think before you act. You don't blurt out your first thought. You weigh your words. Some call it hesitation. You know it's thoughtfulness. You don't need to win every argument. You'd rather understand than be right. You listen more than you talk. You ask questions that matter. What's really going on? How are you, really? You want to know what moves people, what keeps them up at night. You're not interested in small talk. You want to talk about dreams, fears, and the meaning of life. You crave depth in every connection. You'd rather have a real conversation than a dozen shallow ones. You find surface-level chatter exhausting. It drains you faster than any crowd. But give you a real topic, and you light up. You come alive in the presence of truth. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're trying to connect. You value authenticity above all else. You know that real bonds are rare, and you protect them. You choose your inner circle carefully. You don't let just anyone in. You look for people who get it, who see the world with open eyes. You'd rather be alone than surrounded by the wrong energy. That's not loneliness. That's discernment. You know your worth. You don't chase validation. You don't need applause to feel good about yourself. You know that your value isn't measured by your popularity. You measure it by your integrity, by your ability to stay true, even when it's hard. That's the quiet confidence of an intelligent introvert. You don't need to be loud to be strong. Your presence is felt, even in silence. You lead by example, not by volume. You inspire others to slow down, to think, to feel. You remind them that it's okay to need space, that it's okay to want more than just fitting in. You show them the power of reflection, the beauty of solitude, the strength of quiet confidence. You're not antisocial. You're just wise. You're just awake. You're just you. And that's more than enough. So stop apologizing for who you are. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Stop pretending you're less just to fit in. Start owning your gifts. Start trusting your instincts. Start celebrating your difference. The world needs your insight. The world needs your depth. The world needs your truth. You are not a problem to be fixed. You are a gift to be cherished. Your social intelligence is a rare strength. Your emotional intelligence is your compass. You navigate life with empathy and wisdom. You see what others miss. You feel what others ignore. You bring light to quiet places. You make people feel seen, even when you say little. You offer support in subtle ways. A look, a gesture, a thoughtful word. You're the friend people call when they need real advice. You're the calm in the storm, the steady hand when things get rough. You don't need to shout to be heard. Your presence speaks for itself. You lead by example, not by demand. You inspire others to slow down, to think, to feel. You remind them that it's okay to be different, that it's okay to need space, that it's okay to want more from life than just fitting in. You show them the power of reflection, the beauty of solitude, the strength of quiet confidence. You're not antisocial. You're just smarter than most. You see the world through a different lens. You notice what others ignore. Let's talk about work, where your quiet strengths shine the brightest. You've probably noticed that the loudest person in the room doesn't always have the best ideas. Sometimes it's the one who's been listening all along. That's you. You don't rush to speak just to fill the air. You wait until you've thought it through. You weigh your words, and when you speak, people listen. That's not just wisdom, it's a career advantage. In the workplace, your ability to focus is your secret weapon. While others get distracted by office politics, you keep your eyes on the goal. You dive deep into problems, finding solutions no one else sees. You're not afraid of working alone. In fact, you thrive on independence. You do your best thinking in quiet spaces, away from the noise. That's why careers in research, analysis, or design fit you so well. You bring empathy, creativity, and attention to detail to every project. You're the one who catches what others miss. You notice the pattern, the flaw, the opportunity. You turn ideas into action, quietly and steadily. Some people think leadership is about being the loudest, but history proves otherwise. Think of Eleanor Roosevelt, Gandhi, Bill Gates, or Einstein, all introverts who changed the world. They led by listening, reflecting, and acting with purpose. You have that same potential. You don't have to change who you are to succeed. In fact, your introversion is an asset. You're a natural at building real relationships, not just networking for show. People trust you because you listen. You don't just hear their words, you hear their worries, their hopes, their truth. That's why you make a great mentor, manager, or advisor. You lead with empathy, not ego. You're not afraid to step back and let others shine. You empower your team to do their best work. You know that innovation happens in quiet moments, not just in brainstorming sessions. You create space for new ideas to grow. You're the calm in the chaos, the steady hand in a storm. Your reflective nature means you don't make rash decisions. You take the time to understand every angle. You see the risks and the rewards. You make choices that last. In meetings, you don't talk just to be heard. You speak up when it matters, and your words carry weight. Your colleagues respect you for your insight and your integrity. You're not afraid to say, "I don't know," and then go find the answer. You're always learning, always growing. You seek out mentors who understand your journey. You build a network of real connections, not just business cards. You choose quality over quantity every time. You don't need to be at every event or in every spotlight. You show up where it counts. You know your energy is precious, so you protect it. You schedule downtime after big meetings or presentations. You recharge so you can give your best. You set clear boundaries at work. You say no to distractions and yes to what matters. You prepare thoroughly for every challenge. You walk into presentations ready, confident, and calm. You let your work speak for itself. You don't need to shout your achievements. You share them with humility and pride, knowing you've earned every step.